He risked everything to save her. Now she's sworn to protect him until death. The fateful rescue. Nikolai Reed wiped grease from his forehead and squinted at the warped control panel of his salvage ship, the Rust Bucket. The ancient vessel groaned as it drifted through the asteroid belt of the Tarsus system, scanning for anything valuable among the floating rocks. Nikolai had been at this for 15 years, scraping by, finding enough salvage to keep his ship flying and his stomach half full. Today had been particularly disappointing. "Nothing but space dust and broken dreams out here," he muttered, adjusting his faded leather jacket against the perpetual chill of the cockpit. The life support system worked just enough to keep him alive, but comfort was a luxury he couldn't afford. The scanner beeped suddenly, interrupting his self-pity. Nikolai sat up straight, his weathered face creasing with curiosity. "What have we got here?" The readings showed a small craft, presumably a life pod, wedged between two asteroids about half a kilometer away. Unusual energy signatures pulsed from within it, definitely not standard human technology. "Non-Terran tech," Nikolai whispered, a smile slowly spreading across his unshaven face. "Could be worth a fortune to the right buyer." He maneuvered the Rust Bucket closer, deploying the salvage arms to secure the pod. As he worked, he noticed unusual markings etched into its sleek silver hull. The design was like nothing in the Terran Alliance database, flowing, almost organic lines that seemed to shift in the dim light. "Magnetic grapples engage," announced the ship's AI in its eternally bored voice. The pod was secured, and Nikolai activated the retrieval sequence to bring it into his cargo bay. He grabbed his toolkit and emergency medkit, just in case, and made his way to the cargo bay. The artificial gravity fluctuated as usual, making him momentarily weightless before slamming him back down with too much force. He'd never gotten around to fixing that. The pod sat in the center of the bay, steam hissing from microscopic fractures in its hull. Up close, the markings were even more intricate, pulsing with a faint blue glow. Nikolai approached cautiously, scanner in hand. "Life signs detected." The scanner announced, "Non-human physiology. Critical condition." Nikolai hesitated. Salvaging abandoned tech was one thing, but a living alien was something else entirely. The Terran Alliance had strict regulations about first contact protocols, regulations that came with severe penalties for civilians who broke them. "Just walk away," he told himself. "Report it to the nearest Alliance outpost and collect the finder's fee." The pod emitted a sudden, sharp hiss as a seam appeared along its side. Nikolai jumped back, hand instinctively moving to the blaster at his hip. The pod was opening. A slender, blue-skinned hand emerged, grasping weakly at the air. Nikolai could see iridescent scales covering the skin, catching the light as the hand trembled. Then a face appeared, humanoid but unmistakably alien. Large, almond-shaped eyes, the color of liquid silver, gazed at him. 3 thin ridges ran from the alien's forehead down the sides of its face, pulsing faintly with the same blue light as the pod's markings. The alien spoke, its voice melodic but strained. The translator in Nikolai's comm unit struggled for a moment before rendering. "Help, ambush, must warn, blood," or something like it. Deep purple instead of red, seeped from a wound in the alien's side. Its silver eyes locked onto Nikolai's brown ones with an intensity that made him shiver. "Ah, hell," Nikolai muttered, already knowing he was about to make a decision that would complicate his life tremendously. "Hang on there, I've got a medkit." He approached slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. The alien watched him warily, but did not retreat. Up close, Nikolai could see that the wound was severe. Some kind of energy weapon had burned through protective armor and deep into flesh. "I'm going to help you," he said, knowing his translator would attempt to convert his words. "I need to get you to my medbay." The alien's eyes widened slightly, perhaps in surprise or gratitude, before rolling back. Its slender body went limp, slumping forward. Nikolai lunged to catch it, surprised by how light it was despite being slightly taller than himself. Carefully, he lifted the unconscious alien and carried it to his ship's small medical bay. The rust bucket wasn't equipped for xenobiology, but basic trauma care was universal enough. Stop the bleeding, prevent infection, support vital functions. As Nikolai worked frantically to stabilize his unexpected passenger, the ship's proximity alarm blared. He cursed, glancing at the monitor. A massive vessel had appeared on the edge of the asteroid field. Sleek, predatory, and definitely military. The comm system crackled to life. Unidentified salvage vessel. This is the Kethrin Imperium warship Bloodhunter. Surrender the Vashani fugitive immediately or be destroyed. Vashani. Nikolai glanced at the alien on his medical table. Is that what you are? The alien's eyes fluttered open, panic evident in their silver depths. Please, the translator rendered. They will kill me. And you. Nikolai felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The Kethrin Imperium was notorious. Brutal expansionists from the Andromeda galaxy who had been skirmishing with the Terran Alliance for decades. If they wanted this alien, this Vashani, it couldn't be for anything good. Rust Bucket, prepare to be boarded. The Kethrin commander's voice was calm, almost pleasant. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction. Nikolai looked at the wounded alien, then at his ship's meager weapons systems. He was outgunned, outmanned, and out of options. Or was he? Sorry, friends, he said into the comm, but I'm in the middle of some delicate salvage operations. Can't be disturbed. Before they could respond, he cut the communication and ran to the bridge, leaving the alien secured on the medical table. He slid into the pilot's seat, fingers dancing across the controls. Diverting all power to engines and rear shields, he announced to no one in particular, "Hope you enjoy the ride, Rust Bucket." The salvage ship lurched forward, diving deeper into the asteroid field. It was a desperate move. The asteroids were as much a danger to him as they were a shield against the Kethrin warship. They're firing, the ship's AI announced with its characteristic lack of urgency. Nikolai yanked the controls hard, ducking the ship behind a massive asteroid just as energy beams scorched the space where they had been. The Rust Bucket shuddered as debris pinged against its hull. Come on, old girl, Nikolai urged his ship, just a little farther. He had a plan. Risky, probably stupid, but it was all he had. He spotted what he was looking for, a narrow passage between two enormous asteroids, barely wide enough for his ship. Beyond it was a dense cluster that would mask his energy signature. Pursuing vessel has launched fighters, the AI informed him. Perfect timing. Nikolai grinned, sweat beading on his forehead. He cut the main engines and fired the maneuvering thrusters in a complex sequence, sending the Rust Bucket into a controlled spin through the narrow gap. As he emerged on the other side, he triggered the ship's sole weapon, a mining laser designed to break up asteroids. Instead of firing it forward, he aimed it at the unstable asteroid to his right, cutting deep into its core. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The asteroid fractured, releasing a cascade of rocky debris that filled the narrow passage behind him, temporarily blocking the pursuit. Nikolai didn't waste the opportunity. He pushed his engines to maximum, weaving through the asteroid field until he reached the far side, then punched into hyperdrive. The stars stretched into lines of light as the Rust Bucket leaped into hyperspace, leaving the Kethrin warship behind. For now, exhausted, Nikolai set the autopilot and returned to the medical bay. The alien was conscious, watching him with those strange silver eyes. "You saved me," the translator rendered its words. "Why risk yourself for an unknown?" Nikolai shrugged, checking the medical readouts. "Let's just say I'm not a fan of bullies, no matter what galaxy they're from." The alien studied him for a long moment. "I am Tilara, warrior of the Vashani Conclave. You have earned a blood debt that can never be repaid." "Blood debt?" Nikolai raised an eyebrow. "Sounds serious." "It is. Talara's expression was solemn. I am bound to you until death. Your enemies are mine. Your safety is my sacred duty. Nikolai laughed nervously. Look, I appreciate the thought, but that's really not necessary. I'm Nikolai Reed, by the way. Once you're healed up, I can drop you at the nearest neutral port. Talara's expression didn't change. You do not understand. The blood debt is our most sacred tradition. I am sworn to protect you now, Nikolai Reed. It is done. As the rust bucket hurtled through hyperspace toward an uncertain destination, Nikolai began to realize that salvaging that escape pod might have been the most consequential decision of his life, and potentially the most dangerous. Well, he sighed. At least life won't be boring anymore. Blood debt. 3 weeks had passed since Nikolai's impulsive rescue in the asteroid field. The rust bucket was docked at Helios Station, a grimy outpost on the fringes of Terran Alliance space, where questions were few and credits spoke louder than regulations. The station was a sprawling construct of mismatched modules, home to smugglers, mercenaries, and those looking to disappear. Nikolai slouched in a corner booth at the broken airlock, a dingy bar frequented by salvagers and other spacers of questionable repute. His fingers drummed nervously on the scared table as he watched the door. The meeting was already 10 minutes late. You should not have come alone, said a familiar melodic voice from behind him. Nikolai nearly jumped out of his skin. How do you? Never mind. I thought we agreed you'd stay with the ship. Talara slid into the booth across from him, drawing curious glances from the bar's other patrons. The Vashani warrior had recovered remarkably quickly from her injuries, revealing a strength and resilience that continued to surprise Nikolai. She wore a hooded cloak over her armor to conceal her alien features, but her silver eyes gleamed from the shadows of the hood. I sensed your anxiety, she said simply. The blood debt compels me to be where danger threatens you. Nikolai sighed. In the weeks since rescuing Talara, he'd learned that arguing with her about the blood debt was pointless. To the Vashani, it was more than an oath. It was a biological imperative, almost like a natural law. It's just a business meeting, he said, taking a swig of his synthetic whiskey. Nothing dangerous about it. Talara's head tilted slightly, a gesture he'd come to recognize as skepticism. You carry both your blasters, and your heart rate is elevated. This is not just business. Before Nikolai could respond, the bar's door slid open with a mechanical wheeze. A broad-shouldered man with cybernetic implants visible along his jawline entered, scanning the room with augmented eyes that glowed faintly red in the dim light. Behind him followed 2 equally intimidating figures. That's Darius Vex, Nikolai muttered. Black market tech dealer. Not exactly a friend, but he pays well for rare salvage. He is armed, Talara observed quietly, as are his companions. Everyone's armed here. It's practically the dress code. Darius spotted them and approached with a predatory smile. Reed, been a while. Heard you found something interesting. Nikolai nodded cautiously. Depends on what you consider interesting. Darius slid into the booth uninvited, while his associates remained standing, strategically positioned to watch the room. He noticed Talara and raised an eyebrow. New partner. Didn't take you for the type to share the profits. Temporary arrangement, Nikolai replied. About that tech. Straight to business, huh? Darius leaned forward. Word is you salvage some non-Terran tech. Advanced stuff. The kind that certain parties would pay extremely well for. Nikolai had been careful, or so he thought. He'd only mentioned the alien pod's unusual energy signature to one contact, a parts dealer on the station who apparently couldn't keep his mouth shut. I might have found something, Nikolai admitted cautiously. Question is, what's it worth to you? Darius grinned, revealing teeth filed to points. An unsettling cosmetic modification popular among the criminal elite. 50,000 credits. Untraceable. It was more money than Nikolai had seen in years, enough to fix the rust bucket properly and live comfortably for months. He felt a familiar greed rising, but something else too, an uncomfortable twinge of conscience. The pod was Vashani technology. Selling it felt like a betrayal of Telara, even if she'd never mentioned it. "I need to think about it," he said finally. Darius's artificial eyes narrowed. "Don't think too long. Others might be interested too. Less generous buyers." The threat was clear. Nikolai nodded stiffly. "I'll be in touch." As Darius stood to leave, his gaze lingered on Telara. "Interesting company you keep these days, Reed." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "By the way, there's been chatter about a Catherine bounty. Big one. For a salvager who interfered with their military operations. Wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" Nikolai kept his expression neutral with effort. "Can't say that I do." "Shame." Darius straightened. "Stay alive, Reed. I want that tech." After he left, Nikolai slumped in his seat. Well, that could have gone better. "He knows," Telara said flatly. "About the Kethrins. About me." "Yeah, I got that impression too." Nikolai downed the rest of his drink. "We should get back to the ship, figure out our next move." They were halfway back to the docking bay when Nikolai sensed they were being followed. Old instincts from a life spent in dangerous places kicked in, and he casually guided Telara into a narrower corridor. 4 individuals, Telara murmured without looking back. Armed. Moving with purpose. Nikolai was still amazed by her perception. Friends of Darius, you think? Perhaps, or Catherine agents. They employ many species for their dirty work. They quickened their pace, taking a series of turns through the station's labyrinthine back passages. The footsteps behind them grew faster too. "So much for just business," Telara said dryly. Nikolai couldn't help grinning despite the danger. In their weeks together, the alien had developed an unexpected grasp of human sarcasm. The first energy blast hit the wall beside them, sending sparks cascading over their heads. Nikolai drew his blaster and returned fire blindly, pulling Telara around another corner. 4 against 2, he panted. Not great odds. Telara's hand moved to her belt, where she carried a device that looked deceptively simple, a slender rod of iridescent metal. With a flick of her wrist, it extended into a staff crackling with energy. "The odds are in our favor," she said with calm certainty. Another blast scorched the air near them. Nikolai ducked and fired back, catching one of their pursuers in the shoulder. The man went down with a cry. 3 now, he muttered. Telara moved with astonishing speed, her cloak billowing behind her as she charged toward their attackers. Her staff whirled in an arc of blue light, connecting with the nearest man's chest. He convulsed and dropped to the floor, unconscious or worse. Nikolai had seen her train on the ship, practicing forms and movements unlike anything in human martial arts. But this was different. In combat, she was transformed, graceful, lethal, and utterly focused. The remaining pursuers concentrated their fire on Telara, clearly recognizing the greater threat. She deflected one blast with her staff, but another caught her in the side, staggering her. "Telara!" Nikolai shouted, charging forward. He tackled one attacker, driving him into the wall with desperate strength. They grappled briefly before Nikolai managed to strike the man's temple with the butt of his blaster, dropping him to the floor. He turned to find Telara facing the last attacker, a woman with augmented reflexes who moved almost as quickly as the Vashani. They exchanged a flurry of blows, the corridor filling with the crackle of energy and the flash of blades. Nikolai circled, looking for a clear shot, but they moved too fast. Finally, Telara feinted and caught her opponent with a sweeping blow to the legs. As the woman fell, Telara's staff connected with her chest, sending a controlled surge of energy through her body. Silence fell in the corridor. Telara stood among the fallen attackers, breathing heavily, a patch of purple blood spreading across her side where the energy blast had struck her. "We should question one," she said, already recovering her composure. Nikolai approached the woman, who was still conscious but paralyzed by Tellera's staff. "Who sent you? Darius?" The woman's eyes flicked between them, filled with fear. "The Kethrans have a bounty out. 500,000 credits for the Vashani," she gasped, "and her human protector." Nikolai felt the blood drain from his face. 500,000. "Every mercenary and bounty hunter in 3 systems will be after you," the woman continued. "The Kethrans want the Vashani alive. You they don't care about." A distant alarm began to sound. Station security, finally responding to the disturbance. "We need to go," Tellera said urgently, already moving toward the docking bay. They ran, reaching the rust bucket just as security forces began sealing off sections of the station. Nikolai threw himself into the pilot's seat, initiating launch procedures with practiced speed. "Station security is denying departure clearance," the ship's AI announced. "Override it," Nikolai ordered. "Emergency protocols." The rust bucket's engines rumbled to life. Nikolai bypassed safety systems, forcing the docking clamps to release. Alarms blared throughout the ship as they pulled away from the station without proper clearance. "They're activating defense systems," Tellera warned, watching the sensors from the co-pilot's seat. Nikolai swore under his breath. "Hold on to something." He pushed the engines to maximum thrust, sending the rust bucket hurtling away from the station in a barely controlled burn. Defense turrets tracked their escape, firing warning shots that quickly became less warning and more intent. One blast clipped their port side, sending the ship into a spin. Nikolai fought the controls, stabilizing their trajectory just enough to make the jump to hyperspace. As the stars stretched into streaks of light, he finally allowed himself to breathe. That was close. Tellera was examining her wound, which had begun bleeding again during their frantic escape. "The blood debt remains unfulfilled," she said quietly. "I failed to protect you adequately." Nikolai turned to her in disbelief. "Failed? You took down 3 armed mercenaries like they were training dummies. I'd say that's pretty adequate protection." She shook her head. "You were placed in danger because of me. The debt grows larger." "Look," Nikolai said, setting the autopilot and moving to help her with the wound. "I think we need to have a serious talk about this blood debt thing. Where I come from, we just say thank you and maybe buy each other a drink." For the first time since he'd met her, Tellera smiled, a slight upward curve of her lips that transformed her alien features into something unexpectedly warm. "Your customs are strange," Nikolai read, "but perhaps there is wisdom in them." As he helped bandage her injury, Nikolai realized something had changed between them. The blood debt might have bound Tellera to him initially, but something else was forming now. A partnership, perhaps even a friendship, forged in danger and sealed with trust. "So," he said, 500,000 credits on our heads. "Where do we go from here?" Tellera's silver eyes met his, resolute and clear. "Wherever we must. The galaxy is vast, and I have much to teach you about surviving as a hunted individual." "Great," Nikolai sighed, but there was no real frustration in it. Always wanted to be a fugitive. As the rust bucket carried them deeper into the uncharted regions of space, Nikolai found himself smiling despite everything. Life had certainly become more dangerous since he'd rescued that alien escape pod, but also, somehow, more meaningful.